You think Shannon Sharpe is just another TV star? Oh, you couldn't be more wrong. Before becoming one of the biggest personalities in sports media, Shannon Sharpe faced extreme poverty and family tragedies. But he didn't just overcome it all, he won 3 Super Bowl titles and forever changed the tight end position. Today, we're going to show how he not only became a media legend, but also revolutionized NFL offenses. How good was he really? And where does he rank among the greatest tight ends of all time? Let's find out. Shannon Sharpe was born in the small, rural town of Glenville, Georgia, on June 26, 1968. Life in rural Georgia during the 1960s was tough, especially for African American families, where poverty and limited opportunities were constant challenges. From the very beginning, Shannon's life was an uphill battle. When he was just 3 months old, his parents, Pete Sharpe and Mary Alice Dixon, separated. But this was only the first of many struggles he would face in his early years. As a teenager, Shannon endured a devastating loss. His father, Pete, passed away after a long battle with cancer. This tragedy left a deep void in Shannon's life, taking away a father figure who could have guided his first steps, both in life and in football. With his father gone and his mother no longer a constant presence, Shannon and his older brother, Sterling, were raised by their grandmother, Mary Porter. She became both the backbone and the guiding force of the family, offering all the love and discipline they needed despite their dire circumstances. The Sharpe family was extremely poor, and the house they lived in was built out of cinder blocks with no insulation or proper heating. During the harsh Georgia winters, the cold inside their home was just as brutal as the cold outside. On the coldest days, Shannon and his family relied on thin blankets for warmth, as they had no other way to shield themselves from the biting chill. The house was small, cramped, and barely suitable to house the entire family. Mary Porter worked tirelessly to provide for not just Shannon and Sterling, but for other family members as well. Even with her relentless work ethic, it was barely enough to cover the essentials. Poverty wasn't just a condition, it was a constant reality. One incident highlighted the extreme hardships they faced. A burglar broke into their home, but there was nothing of value to steal. The irony of having so little that even a thief found nothing to take speaks volumes about the level of deprivation the Sharpe family lived with daily. Despite these unrelenting circumstances, Mary Porter refused to let poverty define what her grandsons could become. She instilled in them a strict work ethic and a sense of responsibility that would shape Shannon and Sterling's future. For Mary, hard work and excellence were the keys to breaking free from their situation. "If you're going to do something, do it to the best of your ability," she would say. This philosophy resonated deeply with Shannon from a young age, and it became a guiding principle that he carried throughout his life, both on and off the football field. It was through sports that Shannon and Sterling found a way out of their harsh reality. The Sharpe family had natural athletic talent, and Sterling, the older brother, quickly became a standout in high school. He was a star in football, basketball, and track, catching the eye of scouts across the country. Sterling eventually earned a scholarship to play football at the University of South Carolina, where his college career blossomed, positioning him as one of the most promising players of his generation. For Shannon, watching his older brother's success was both an inspiration and a reminder of the hard road ahead. While Sterling was shining on the gridiron, Shannon faced greater hurdles. Though he had natural athletic ability, his academic struggles limited his opportunities. While his brother was being recruited by major universities, Shannon received just one offer from Savannah State, a small Division II school. For many, this would have been seen as a setback. For Shannon, it was just another obstacle he was determined to overcome. At Savannah State, Shannon saw an opportunity to prove his worth, even without the media attention or the prestige that came with playing for a major program. He knew that, unlike his brother, he wasn't playing under the bright lights of a big-time school, But that didn't deter him. Shannon approached every practice and every game like it was the Super Bowl, knowing that each rep on the field was a chance to prove himself. Football wasn't just a game for him, it was his way out, his only ticket to lift himself and his family out of poverty. He wasn't just playing for himself. He was playing for his grandmother, who had sacrificed everything to give him and Sterling a shot at a better life. Throughout this time, Mary Porter remained Shannon's biggest source of motivation. Even though she didn't fully understand the rules of football, she never stopped encouraging him to give his all. For her, it didn't matter what path he chose, as long as he pursued it with everything he had. This mindset became a cornerstone of Shannon's approach to life and his career. He knew that success wouldn't come easy and that natural talent alone wasn't enough. It would take relentless hard work, just like the kind his grandmother had shown every day. Shannon Sharpe's childhood was defined by immense struggles, from the loss of his father to the extreme financial difficulties his family faced. But these hardships only fueled his determination. He knew that he couldn't allow his circumstances to dictate his future, and he used those experiences as motivation to rise above. His path to the NFL was just beginning, and Shannon was ready to prove that he could go from the humble fields of Savannah State to the bright lights of the biggest stage in football. For Shannon and Sterling Sharpe, sports weren't just a hobby, they were a lifeline. Growing up in poverty, they didn't have the luxuries that other kids enjoyed, but what they did have was a natural talent for athletics. From an early age, both brothers knew that sports were their ticket out. It wasn't just about playing the game, it was about survival. Sterling, being the older brother, quickly made a name for himself. By the time he entered high school, he was already being hailed as a generational talent. He was a triple threat, excelling in football, basketball, and track. Sterling's prowess on the field, especially in football, turned heads, and soon enough, major colleges came knocking. Sterling's talent didn't just stop at being good in high school. He was a standout wide receiver, breaking records and putting up numbers that few could match. College scouts were lining up to recruit him, and eventually, he committed to the University of South Carolina. His rise to stardom seemed like destiny, but for Shannon, things were far less certain. Watching his older brother succeed fueled Shannon's desire to follow in his footsteps, but he knew his path would be far more difficult. At Glenville High School, Shannon played multiple sports, just like his brother, but he wasn't getting the same attention. While Sterling was being courted by major programs, Shannon struggled academically. This meant that even though he had athletic talent, he wasn't seen as a sure bet for college football. Most Division I schools overlooked him, leaving him with only one option: Savannah State, a small Division II school. For Shannon, going to a Division II program wasn't a disappointment. It was another chance to prove himself. He knew that in football, no matter where you start, your work ethic and performance on the field can take you as far as your determination allows. He didn't care about the lack of attention from major scouts. What mattered was what he did with the opportunity he had. At Savannah State, Shannon became a dominant force on the field, setting records and establishing himself as one of the best players to ever come out of the program. While Sterling was shining on the national stage, Shannon was grinding it out at a smaller school, with fewer resources and less attention. But none of that stopped him. Every snap, every down, he played with the same intensity as if he were already in the NFL. Shannon knew that scouts might not come looking for him, but if he worked hard enough, his time would come. Savannah State wasn't just where Shannon honed his skills. It was where he developed a mindset that would carry him through his entire career. While other players had the spotlight and the big school treatment, Shannon had to fight for every inch. He took pride in his blue-collar approach to the game. Nothing was given to him, and that only fueled his fire. By the time Shannon left Savannah State, he had set numerous school records, including 192 receptions, 3,744 receiving yards, and 40 touchdowns over 4 seasons. His performance was undeniable, but being from a small school meant that the NFL wasn't watching as closely. Despite his stellar numbers, Shannon faced the harsh reality that the road to the NFL for a Division II player was a long and uncertain one. But if there's one thing Shannon Sharpe was never short on, it was determination. He wasn't about to let his circumstances dictate his future. He was ready to take his shot, no matter how long the odds. Despite his impressive performance at Savannah State, Shannon Sharpe's path to the NFL was anything but easy. Coming from a Division II school, the spotlight was dim, and NFL scouts weren't paying much attention to players outside the powerhouse programs. The odds were stacked against him. Most NFL teams didn't even have Shannon on their radar, and those that did saw him as a tweener, a player too small to be a traditional tight end and too big to be a wide receiver. But for Shannon, these doubts were nothing new. He had spent his entire life proving people wrong, and this time would be no different. The 1990 MFL draft came around, and round after round passed without Shannon's name being called. It wasn't until the 7th round, with the 192nd overall pick, that the Denver Broncos took a chance on the unknown kid from Savannah State. For many players, being selected that late would have been discouraging, but Shannon saw it as another opportunity to prove his doubters wrong. He knew he wasn't the prototypical tight end, but he believed in his ability to outwork anyone on the field. However, Shannon's first 2 years in the NFL were anything but smooth. The Broncos didn't quite know what to do with him. He was originally brought in as a wide receiver, a role that didn't play to his strengths. His first 2 seasons were quiet, with Shannon catching just 29 passes for 421 yards. He was trying to find his place in a system that didn't seem to know how to use him. All the while, his brother Sterling was thriving with the Green Bay Packers, earning Pro Bowl selections and making headlines as one of the league's premier wide receivers. For Shannon, watching his brother's success while he struggled to make an impact was tough. There was a sense that Sterling was destined for greatness, while Shannon was fighting just to stay on the roster. But if there's one thing Shannon Sharpe never lacked, it was resilience. He wasn't about to give up on his dream. He kept his head down, worked harder than ever, and waited for his moment. That moment came in 1992 when Broncos head coach Dan Reeves made a crucial decision. He moved Shannon from wide receiver to tight end. It was the position where Shannon truly belonged, and the results were immediate. In that season, Shannon caught 53 passes for 640 yards, leading all NFL tight ends. The Broncos had finally found the right role for him, and Shannon was just getting started. Over the next several seasons, Shannon continued to elevate his game. He wasn't just a tight end who could block, he became a legitimate offensive weapon, redefining what the position could be. He had the size to handle the physicality of the position, but the speed and agility to create mismatches against linebackers and safeties. His ability to stretch the field and make big plays became a key part of the Broncos' offense. By 1993, Shannon had firmly established himself as one of the league's top tight ends, catching 81 passes for 995 yards and 9 touchdowns. For the first time in his career, he was named first-team All-Pro, the highest honor for any player at his position. And in a remarkable twist of fate, that same year, Shannon was named All-Pro alongside his brother Sterling, who continued to dominate as a wide receiver for the Packers. The Sharpe brothers had made it. From their humble beginnings in Glenville, Georgia, they were now both among the best players in the NFL, but their time shining together would be tragically short. In 1994, Sterling suffered a career-ending neck injury, cutting short what many believed would have been a Hall of Fame career. For Shannon, it was a devastating blow. He had looked up to Sterling his entire life, and now his brother's career was over. But instead of being discouraged, Shannon used Sterling's injury as motivation. He vowed to carry on the Sharpe legacy and honor his brother by becoming the best tight end the league had ever seen. With each passing season, Shannon continued to push himself to new heights. He was no longer just a solid tight end, he was revolutionizing the position. His combination of size, speed, and hands was unmatched, and he became a nightmare for opposing defenses. As he entered the prime of his career, Shannon's determination to win a Super Bowl became his driving force. He wasn't content with personal accolades, he wanted to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. By the mid-1990s, Shannon Sharpe had established himself as one of the premier tight ends in the NFL. But for him, individual accolades weren't enough. He had his sights set on something bigger, a Super Bowl. And with John Elway under center and Mike Shanahan as head coach, the Denver Broncos had the pieces in place to chase that elusive championship. In 1996, the Broncos started to show real promise. They finished the regular season with a dominant 13-3 record, and Shannon was a key part of their offensive success. That season, he posted 80 receptions for 1,062 yards and 10 touchdowns, career highs that solidified his status as one of the top targets in the league. But it wasn't just his stats that made him stand out. Shannon had developed into a leader on and off the field, known for his fiery personality and relentless work ethic. He was the heart and soul of the team's offense, always ready to talk trash to opponents, but backing it up with his play every single week. However, despite their regular season success, the 1996 playoffs were a disaster for the Broncos. They suffered a shocking 30-20-7 upset loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars in the divisional round, a defeat that left Shannon and his teammates reeling. Denver had been one of the top teams all year, but their Super Bowl dreams were crushed in the blink of an eye. For Shannon, it was a bitter pill to swallow. He had come so close, only to watch it slip away. But that loss did something else. It ignited a fire in him and the rest of the Broncos. They came back in 1997 with a chip on their shoulder, determined not to let history repeat itself. The 1997 season was one for the ages. The Broncos got off to a red-hot start, winning their first 6 games. Shannon was a major factor in their early success, catching key passes and providing the emotional spark that the team needed. He didn't just make plays, he made sure everyone knew about it. In a memorable moment during a blowout win against the New England Patriots, Shannon picked up a sideline phone and famously called for the National Guard, saying, "Mr. President, we need help. We're killing the Patriots." It was classic Shannon, combining his larger-than-life personality with his undeniable ability to dominate on the field. But trash talk aside, Shannon and the Broncos were laser-focused on one goal: getting back to the playoffs and finishing what they had started. And this time, they weren't going to be denied. Denver stormed through the postseason, and in the AFC Championship game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Shannon came up big with clutch receptions that helped propel the Broncos to a 20-4-20-1 victory. Finally, after years of coming up short, Shannon was headed to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 32 was a showdown between the Broncos and the defending champion Green Bay Packers. The Packers were favored to win, led by quarterback Brett Favre, but Shannon and the Broncos had other plans. From the opening whistle, Denver played like a team on a mission. They jumped out to a 17-7 lead, with running back Terrell Davis leading the way on the ground. Shannon didn't find the end zone, but his presence was felt throughout the game as a security blanket for John Elway. Elway targeted Shannon 5 times, trusting him in critical moments when the pressure was at its highest. The game turned into a classic, with both teams trading blows in a back-and-forth battle. With the score tied at 24 in the fourth quarter, the Broncos needed a hero, and Terrell Davis delivered, scoring the go-ahead touchdown with just under 2 minutes left in the game. Denver's defense held strong on the Packers' final drive, sealing a 30-1-20-4 victory and delivering the Broncos their first Super Bowl title in franchise history. For Shannon, The victory was more than just a championship, it was validation of everything he had worked for. The kid from Glenville, Georgia, who had been overlooked and doubted, was now a Super Bowl champion. And in a moment that showcased the bond between the Sharpe brothers, Shannon gave his first Super Bowl ring to his brother Sterling, who had seen his own career cut short by injury. It was a tribute to the role Sterling had played in shaping Shannon's journey, and a gesture that underscored the deep connection between the two. But Shannon wasn't done yet. One Super Bowl wasn't enough. In 1998, the Broncos came back even stronger. Denver opened the season with a 13-0 record, demolishing opponents and establishing themselves as one of the most dominant teams in NFL history. Shannon continued to be a key cog in the offense, catching 64 passes for 768 yards and 10 touchdowns. Once again, the Broncos marched through the playoffs, and once again, they found themselves in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 33 was a different story than the year before. This time, Denver was the favorite, and they played like it. Facing the Atlanta Falcons, the Broncos controlled the game from start to finish, cruising to a 34-19 victory. Shannon didn't put up huge numbers in the game, but his leadership and playmaking had been instrumental in getting the Broncos to the big stage once again. With back-to-back championships, Shannon and the Broncos had cemented their place in NFL history. For John Elway, Super Bowl 33 would be his last game, as the legendary quarterback announced his retirement after the victory. For Shannon, it marked the end of an era. Elway had been his quarterback for almost his entire career, and now the Broncos would have to start over with someone new under center. But for Shannon, his legacy as one of the greatest tight ends to ever play the game was already secure. He had done what so many players dream of. He had reached the pinnacle of the sport, not once, but twice. After winning back-to-back Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos, Shannon Sharpe had already established himself as one of the greatest tight ends of all time. But in 1999, things changed. John Elway, the quarterback who had been the heart and soul of the Broncos for so many years, retired following their second Super Bowl victory. With Elway gone, the team struggled to find its footing, and Shannon, now in his 10th season, faced injuries that limited his playing time. It was a frustrating year, both for Shannon and the Broncos, and by the end of the season, he found himself at a crossroads in his career. In 2000, Shannon made a bold decision. He left Denver and signed with the Baltimore Ravens. For Shannon, it was a fresh start and an opportunity to contribute to a team with a different identity. The Ravens were known for their dominant defense, led by future Hall of Famer Ray Lewis, but their offense lacked a reliable downfield threat. Shannon was brought in to be that guy, the veteran presence who could make plays in crucial moments and help take the Ravens' offense to the next level. And that's exactly what he did. In his first season with the Ravens, Shannon led the team in receiving yards with 810 and scored 5 touchdowns. He quickly became a favorite target for quarterback Trent Dilfer, especially in critical situations. While the Ravens were known for their defense, one of the most fearsome units in NFL history, it was Shannon's ability to make big plays on offense that often tipped the scales in close games. His leadership and experience were invaluable, especially as the team made its push toward the playoffs. The Ravens finished the regular season with a 12-4 record, but that wasn't enough to win the AFC Central Division, as the Tennessee Titans edged them out with a 13-3 record. Still, the Ravens were locked and loaded for the postseason, and they quickly proved that they were built for playoff football. In the wild card round, they dismantled Shannon's former team, the Denver Broncos, 20-1-3, in a game that saw Shannon haul in 3 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. It was a bittersweet moment for Shannon, beating the team where he had built his career, but his focus was squarely on the ultimate prize, another Super Bowl ring. The Ravens' next challenge came in the divisional round against the Titans, and it was a battle. Early in the game, It was clear that both teams were evenly matched, but it was Shannon who delivered the game-changing play. With the Ravens backed up near their own end zone, Shannon caught a short pass and turned it into a monstrous 58-yard gain, flipping the field and giving the Ravens the momentum they needed to pull away. Baltimore won the game 24-10, and Shannon's clutch catch was the turning point. Next up was the FC Championship game against the Oakland Raiders, and once again, Shannon was at the center of the action. In one of the most memorable moments of his career, Shannon caught a pass at the Ravens' 12-yard line and turned it into a 96-yard touchdown, still the longest play in a FC Championship history. That was the only touchdown of the game, and it was all the Ravens needed to secure a 16-3 victory and punch their ticket to Super Bowl 35. In Super Bowl 35, the Ravens faced the New York Giants, and it was a game dominated by defense. The Ravens' defense completely stifled the Giants' offense, allowing just 7 points in a 34-7 blowout victory. Shannon didn't have a big statistical game. He caught just one pass for 5 yards, but his impact on the team went far beyond the box score. His leadership, his ability to come up big in key moments, and his presence in the locker room had helped guide the Ravens to their first Super Bowl title in franchise history. With that victory, Shannon Sharpe became a 3-time Super Bowl champion, cementing his legacy as one of the all-time greats. His ability to adapt, from being a late-round pick from a small school to thriving in a new team environment in Baltimore, only added to his story. At the age of 32, many players begin to slow down, but Shannon had proven that his best football was still ahead of him. After one more season with the Ravens, where he put up another solid campaign with 811 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, Shannon decided it was time to head back to Denver for one final chapter. But his time in Baltimore had been transformative. Not only had he shown he could win on another team, but he had also proven that he could be a leader in any locker room. And more importantly, he had added another Super Bowl ring to his collection, further solidifying his place among the legends of the game. After winning his 3rd Super Bowl ring with the Baltimore Ravens, Shannon Sharpe returned to where it all began, Denver. In 2002, at the age of 34, Shannon signed a deal to finish his career with the Denver Broncos. For Shannon, it wasn't just about playing out his final years. It was about coming home. Denver was where he had built his career, where he had grown from an overlooked 7th-round pick to one of the most dominant tight ends in NFL history. Now he was back to close the final chapter of his playing days. Despite being in the twilight of his career, Shannon continued to perform at a high level. In his first season back with the Broncos, he recorded 61 receptions for 686 yards and 3 touchdowns. His impact went far beyond the stats, though. Shannon was a leader, a mentor for younger players, and a steady presence in the locker room. The Broncos weren't the Super Bowl contender they had once been, but Shannon's return brought stability and veteran experience to the team. He was still the go-to guy in clutch situations, and even as he aged, his work ethic never wavered. In 2003, Shannon's final season in the NFL, he once again proved that he was still a threat on the field. He finished the year with 62 catches for 770 yards and 8 touchdowns, showing that even at 35 years old, he could still hang with the best. Over the course of his final 2 seasons in Denver, Shannon racked up 1,456 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. These weren't just numbers for a tight end. They were numbers that rivaled the best wide receivers in the game. Shannon's ability to produce big plays and stretch the field, even late in his career, was a testament to his preparation, discipline, and drive. By the end of the 2003 season, Shannon knew it was time to hang up his cleats. He had done everything a player could dream: 3 Super Bowl rings, 8 Pro Bowl selections, and a legacy as one of the greatest tight ends to ever play the game. But his influence on the game went far beyond his stats or his championships. Shannon Sharpe had redefined what it meant to be a tight end in the NFL. Before Shannon, tight ends were mostly seen as blockers who occasionally caught short passes. But Shannon's combination of speed, agility, and soft hands allowed him to become a legitimate deep threat, something rarely seen from the position before. Shannon wasn't just a tight end, he was a game changer. His ability to create mismatches against linebackers and safeties forced defenses to adjust in ways they hadn't before. He could line up anywhere on the field, whether it was in the slot, out wide, or on the line of scrimmage, and he could beat defenders in every scenario. He wasn't just part of the offense, he was often the centerpiece. When Shannon retired, he left the game with some incredible stats: 815 career receptions, 10,060 receiving yards, and 62 touchdowns. He was the all-time leader in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns by a tight end when he stepped away from the game. And even today, he remains among the top in every major statistical category for the position. But more than just the numbers, Shannon's legacy is felt in the way tight ends are used in the modern NFL. His career paved the way for players like Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, and Rob Gronkowski, athletic, pass-catching tight ends who could dominate the middle of the field and stretch defenses deep. In 2011, Shannon Sharpe's legacy was cemented when he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Standing on that stage in Canton, Ohio, Shannon reflected on his journey from the small town of Glenville, Georgia, where he grew up in poverty, to the pinnacle of professional football. He thanked his grandmother, Mary Porter, who had raised him and instilled in him the work ethic that carried him through every challenge. And of course, he paid tribute to his brother Sterling, whose career was cut short, but who had always been Shannon's greatest inspiration. But even after his playing days were over, Shannon's influence didn't stop. He transitioned seamlessly into a career in sports media, becoming one of the most recognizable and outspoken personalities on television. Whether he's analyzing games, delivering hot takes, or sharing his unmatched knowledge of the game, Shannon's larger-than-life personality has kept him in the spotlight long after he left the field. To this day, Shannon Sharpe remains a figure who commands respect, both for what he accomplished on the field and for the way he's carried himself off it. From being overlooked and doubted at every step to becoming a Hall of Famer and one of the most beloved figures in NFL history, Shannon Sharpe's journey is a testament to hard work, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. Shannon Sharpe's journey from a small-town kid in Glenville, Georgia, to one of the most influential tight ends in NFL history is a story of perseverance, hard work, and unrelenting determination. He transformed not only his own life, but also the game of football, redefining what a tight end could do on the field. His 3 Super Bowl rings, Hall of Fame induction, and his transition into a respected voice in sports media are all testaments to his greatness. But Shannon's legacy goes beyond the numbers and the accolades. It's a story of overcoming adversity, of pushing past every limit set before him, and of never backing down from a challenge. He's an inspiration to generations of athletes, proving that no matter where you start, it's how you finish that truly matters. Shannon Sharpe didn't just play the game, he changed it. And for that, his place in NFL history is forever secure. If you enjoyed this journey through Shannon Sharpe's incredible career, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more of the best NFL stories. And don't forget to check out some of our other videos on screen now. We'll see you next time.